Hello, Just Jax here and welcome to my channel. This is Cosmic Cat Part 3. Part 1 and 2 I did have some success with, in the sense that it was recorded better. Still need a little bit, need the tripod set up a little bit higher, because each time I moved anything up it detracted from the focus and made it ever so slightly out. So I'm going to raise the tripod a touch more to see if that does the job and get it more on point. In more successful news, I did have way better ongoing audio, which is why I did those with no music. It's also to try a slightly different format. But when I got to editing part 3, which were 3 chunks of recording, that's when my mic had run out of charge, and I didn't realise until after those segments, and then charged it. And for the following parts, I think part 4, maybe part 5, we'll have to see, we'll be back to ongoing dialogue as opposed to voiceover. So we're temporarily going back to a little bit of background music and the voiceover. If you do happen to prefer some background music, even though the voiceover audio is much clearer, then please do say. I'm happy to put some background music back in. After all, it is quite relaxing, the tunes that I've got playing. And if not, I will continue without them for the time being, and also dependent on the content. So yes, back to the original format, we're doing voiceover. So here we are, and hopefully this will come together fine. So yes, this is the 3rd layer of the super watered down acrylic paint, and we will also be experimenting with flicking paint in this one, so we do get messy towards the end. So yeah, apologies that we've gone backwards a little step, but we should be going forwards again as of the next video. And with having, ongoing audio with the mic working, as long as I always remember to charge it and not just leave it there, forget about it, I am able to put content up a lot quicker because it's not taking as long to go through it all and add music and add voiceover, as well as the editing had been reduced to a minimum, like little to none, as it had ongoing audio. And I got better with stopping the camera when I'm not doing something as opposed to just leaving it run. And also with the setup, I don't have to rotate the image anymore, and that god-awful timestamp has gone, so we don't need to worry about that either. So there are a lot of improvements, and there are a lot of ups with the last 2, and this is only a minor setback in this one, so these things happen. But again, things learn, things to remember, and that is to either turn my mic off when I'm not using it, and put it on charge more regular. It does have a very long battery life, but if you just leave it plugged in doing absolutely nothing, when you're doing absolutely nothing, of course it's going to drain rather quick. So hopefully you'll continue to enjoy, and yeah, I'll let you crack on with the video, and I will, back to the old format, chime in as and when things crop up that need to be mentioned. Oh yes, before I take a pause in the voiceover, I made the paint a tiny bit more concentrate for this layer, and then watered it down a little bit more as I was going on the canvas, just to get, because we'd got a very good build up here, and it was still semi-transparent enough not to totally cover what was going on with the previous 2 layers. So it was just to enhance, especially down the corners. It could continue to be more wispy on the inside, but I wanted the corners to be a little bit more bold and vibrant. So yeah, here we go. some other things worth mentioning while I've got the voiceover going. In the last video that I put up, Cosmic Cat Part 2, you could hear a few clicks randomly, sometimes in the middle of nowhere, sometimes in the middle of dialogue. Obviously I didn't realise that as I was recording, but that was in fact, I've now worked out, I've got a little glass heart necklace that my other half gave me when we very first met, pretty much, and I always wear it, and where I have my hoodie has a metal zip, so every now and again when I leant forward or backwards dramatically, it would click, and obviously I didn't hear this, I wasn't aware of that, but then when I was playing it back during editing, initially I couldn't work out what it was. I thought there was like an audio, I've done something wrong with the audio somewhere along the lines, or sometimes when I start talking and I have a dry mouth, my tongue will, so I thought it might be that as well, but it definitely wasn't. It was the glass heart necklace clacking every now and again against my metal zip. So I will be bearing that in mind in the future, and either taking the zip all the way down because it doesn't need to be all the way up, or just tucking my necklace in my top so it doesn't clack against anything and create these random clicks. And yes, also in the last one, as I mentioned it after it happened and I had put it in the dialogue, you do hear my girl's woof, well, one of my girls' woof. Young Marley, she is not a barker at all. We've had her for nearly a year now, and she's woofed all of 3 times. So she's the silent partner. Nova, the big girl, when she gets playing, she gets super woofy, and they decided they were going to start to have a little play. Now, it's not the most alarming woof, so I played it back and I decided to leave it in because, I love my girls, and they were joining in. They wanted to be part of it. But I did want to mention that as well. That's why I did put it in the description, and I mention it also now. Just because these things, they crop up, but I've said loads of times before, I like the imperfections in life. Life isn't perfect. So I like that captured moment. And plus, as I said, my girls mean a lot to me, so it was sweet to hear them, even though my big girl Nova, oh my days, does she go super woofy and super guttural when she starts playing. It sounds very ferocious, but I can trust you can trust me, it's not. She was like that ever since a pup. When she started playing, she'd get all guttural and throaty. It's just her way, bless her heart. So yes, just to give you all a little heads up that there's some, and then probably will be in the future as well, some random woofs, but they're very good girls, and when I ask them to be quiet, they will. Well, Nova will. Marley's already quiet. So yes, that was just a little side note there. And yeah, as for back to the video, but the actual content right now, this took a number of days to do, as there was a lot of drying time in between things. So I'm trying to get these up in relatively quick succession for you all, so you don't have to, if you are painting along or you're anticipating the next section, because I have it all recorded, obviously it's just a case of editing it and getting it put up. I'm trying to get it up in fairly quick succession for you all, so if you are really interested and you are enjoying it, or you're painting along, then you won't have to wait, even though it is a slow process if you are doing it yourself, because you'll have to wait too in between all this wet watery paint drying. So yes, anyway, what's going on right now is these are the test pieces from the very first video where we're working out what kind of technique and how we were going to apply the background. And it's always handy to keep these, apart from they're really good for scrap bits of paper anyway. This is our little test bit that we can just keep pulling out and have a little test each time we want to do a different layer or apply a different technique or whatever. So we whip these back out, and this is where we're going to have a little experiment with different ways of flicking paint, but we didn't want the paint to flick in like beady lines. We wanted it just to dot the canvas. So that's why we're going to have a little test first, because there was a few different techniques that we were going to try, using finger and paintbrush, so like holding the paintbrush and running your thumb and your nail, if you've got one, so it's very handy, over the top. So that's quite a controlled flick. You can also, I don't think I did it on this one, but I think you can also like tap your paintbrush over your hand. Well, I might have tried that as well, but that gave me more, that would give you more of the stringy type, almost like a Pollock, you know, those stringy lines as opposed to just the dots. And we didn't want that. We didn't want any weird shaped shooting stars in the sky or in the cosmos. We just wanted, you know, little galactic clusters, little Milky Way style star smatterings. So yeah, we tried the paintbrush flick with your thumb. We also got an old toothbrush. Now the older the better, because they're a little bit worn and they're not so soft at that point, and that's what you want. You want a bit of a beaten around toothbrush, or pick up a cheap one from the store that's like category hard, so you've got you know, stiff bristles to work with. And we also did using the thumb with that one, as well as using a piece of card. For those of you that don't like to get your hands too messy, you can do all of these techniques, the paintbrush and the toothbrush, with a piece of card. So you hold the piece of card and then you can run the brush over it, or run the card over the brush, whichever way works best for you. I tried both ways. So yeah, I had a little experiment. The paint, heads up now, will go everywhere. I've got a corner dedicated to this, so it didn't matter, but it literally went everywhere. I had a white speckled hoodie, white speckled trousers, specks on the wooden, you know, wooden boxes and whatnot dotted around me, and a few specks up the wall. But courtesy of it being so just little bits, it did come off, so don't worry if you do get it around too much. Tiny little bits will wash out. If I had big blobs anywhere, well, I'd have big blobs stained on the wall right now and big blobs stained on my hoodie, because they were just tiny little specks. They did come out. And if you are worried, of course, just wear an apron or cover yourself up, or put paper on the walls, or, you know, there's things you can always do. So yeah, just a little heads up, it gets messy. Oh yes, and one of the other techniques that I tried was blowing it. Now, anybody who grew up in the late 80s, more early 90s, will be quite familiar with blow pens, and it would be a little kit that would come with some chunky nibbed felt pens and a little squeezy sort of air gun almost, and you could like lock your pen in there, line the nib up with the end, and then go squirt, 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 and get, it's like a mini version of spray painting almost. I don't have one of those anymore anyway, so I use my mouth. Now this did give some good effect, because this would make, instead of with the paintbrush and the toothbrush, it'd be a little area dotted with specks, and then it'd fade out a tiny bit. You'd have the odd straggler shoot off somewhere else. With the blowing technique, you could create more of a circle cluster in certain areas, so if you wanted there to be more heavy starring, you could use the blow effect. I didn't try blowing through the toothbrush because I didn't think that would work. I didn't think there was enough give in the toothbrush, but I did blow through the paintbrush. But anything's worth a go, so by all means have a pop of blowing through the toothbrush. You might get an even better effect. So yeah, that's the few different things that we have a little experiment with right now. We did bring a couple other colours to the palette because we had all of our, well, the same colour palette that's been running through all this series, the first few canvases so far. Titanium white, ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, silver, just plain purple, and we did have, for experiment's sake, a little pearl space grey, pearl gold and pearl white, as well as just plain white and just plain silver. And that was just to give the stars, or just to see if they looked better, a slightly different colour, a slightly different tone, if you wanted to have the effect of some looking a little bit further off in the distance and some more in the forefront. So you'd go with the pearl space grey. And I did in the end do a little bit of that, but not as much as I thought I would. It was mainly in the end pearl white and just plain white, titanium white, sorry. That gave me the effect that I wanted and the colours that I wanted. But again, have an experiment, because when you research some galactic images and some space themed images, you can get some different colour stars crop up. It's not just always in the background like the, I don't know what you'd call them. I'm going to call it just the cosmos colliding. That wispy, almost like all these different clouds, and I guess nebula would they be, all just sort of merging in different colours. But you can get that with the stars as well. Different stars at different points in their life will, to our eye anyway, have a slightly different colour. So at the moment I think it's Orion, the constellation Orion. I think one of the top, it's either top right or top left, I think, well, one of those stars, the others are kind of white to the eye, and then one is just slightly off, like slightly yellow, and I believe that's because it's going to go. I don't think it'll go in our time. These things take a long time to just go, and you won't see it pop with the naked eye. It'll obviously take a long time for that to, that image to reach us. So yeah, if you want to try different coloured stars, I think that would be pretty cool. Like I say, this is what I wanted for this particular canvas, but that doesn't mean that that has to be how you do it. Same for the colours that I chose with the purples and the blues, well, with the person who's going to have these canvases chose. It doesn't have to be purples and blues. You could pick any colour palette that you like. If your favourite colour is pink, I'd suggest going like pink and purple, and maybe yellow, because that's always a really nice combination. Or you could go like quite contrasting and go greens and reds and have something really bold and in your face, and it will still come together just as beautiful, if not more. So yeah, give it a go, have an experiment. Art is a great experiment after all. And yeah, I'd love to hear of any of you trying these, what colour palettes you used. That'd be pretty cool. Oh yes, and at the very beginning of this video, I'm pretty sure I said this was layer 3. I'm pretty sure this is actually layer 4, and then the stars are layer 5, and then the final one is layer 6, but I think I call layer 6 layer 5 because I'm only counting the blue layers and not anything else that I do in between. But again, build it up to suit you, what you like. You don't have to do all the layers. If you like one layer, do one layer. You don't have to build it up as much as this. And as I mentioned in the last one, if you've built a certain area up with a number of layers but you don't want to touch that anymore, but you'd still like others to be darker, then you still work in one whole layer, but you only add colour to the points that you want and just clean water to the points that you want left. That way you'll still get a nice bleed going on around the edges, but you won't add colour to the areas that you're already happy with. So say if I wanted the top right hand corner to be even bolder blue, but I wanted everything else to stay the same, I'd rework another layer of watered down paint up that corner, but then I just water the rest. And even though that might seem a bit much to water the entire rest, it's just so you don't get any water lines left as well. So it's trying to keep the whole thing in one layer all the time. So even though you might think it'd be alright to just do the blue up the right hand corner and then just do a water line around that, if that paint were to bleed beyond that water line, it will hit the waterline edge and you'll still get a line anyway. Whereas if you take that water right across the canvas, it won't. It'll have plenty of room to continue bleeding, but it won't bleed all the way, so you won't have to worry about it invading the purple zone down the bottom there if you wanted that to stay where it was. It's just a good way to do it without accidentally, potentially ruining all your hard work for the sake of a drop of water. And I bring the test bits back out every now and again as I'm loading up my paintbrush or my toothbrush. You quite often get too much paint on there to start. You don't want a whole heap, otherwise that's where those stringy lines will come out, and we didn't want those. So that's why I'll whip out every now and again the scrap pieces and take off that excess briefly. So it's better to work in fewer lighter layers and fewer lighter attempts than it is one big bold one and have a splodge somewhere you don't want it, which does happen in this little process here. We have a little accident with the paint, and I've left it in so you can see it's nothing to stress or worry about. These things happen. It's just a case of, as I've said before, keeping calm, and working quick so you can clear it up. Now, what happened exactly was I was not paying attention to how much paint had loaded at the base of the bristles of the toothbrush, and when I went to flick some more, a big blob dropped right down in the middle of nowhere. So about half the size of a 5p piece, but still a big blob compared to all the little tiny ones that were being spattered around at this point. So it was a simple clear up, because again, that courtesy of, especially if you're working on dry, it's easier if your background's dry when you do this, because it won't, you know, smudge and blend and merge. So I had a piece of kitchen roll and either like a scrap piece of paper or a piece of thin card, and literally scooped it up onto the kitchen roll with the card, and then used a clean piece of kitchen roll to just mop up the little bit that's left, and it was absolutely fine. It cleaned up a treat. There was no mark left there that you could see that anything had gone wrong. So yeah, like I said, I left that in, as I will leave all hiccups in, so you can see what happens, or see that they happen to begin with, but also see how you can address them, how you can fix them. It's very easy to panic when something goes wrong, and it's very easy to feel a bit defeated when things go a bit wrong, but there'll always be a way to fix them. Like I say, just try and stay calm and work quickly, especially with paint, because the longer you leave that, the greater chance you have of it staining or, you know, affixing itself to the layers beneath. And even if you are able to get that blob away, you'll have a little tiny line, you know, where the paint had started to dry around the edges and fused to the background. You can also, if that does happen, again working relatively quick, but you've got like a little line forming where you've tried to clear it away, as long as your background, and this is only in acrylics, as long as your background is dry, you can have a tiny bit of water on that kitchen roll or on a sponge, and you can break it back down, because even though it's started to dry, it wouldn't be dry enough to set completely, so you'll still have a chance of removing that. And then I dab it with some clean kitchen roll or cotton wool afterwards, just to get rid of any little cloud that might appear. So you can fix these things, so never stress them if little hiccups happen. believe this will be the final layer as far as the purple and blue white silver mix goes in the background. For me and for this design anyway, that was the final layer. I was very happy with where it was at. It was looking really beautiful. It was looking nice and cloudy and smoky in places. And yeah, I really applied some heavier colour to the corners and a little bit throughout. And also this is the point where dripping isn't necessarily a bad thing. I intentionally did some of that. So I could bring a little bit of the purple to the blues and a little bit of the blues to the purples. And of course the whole canvas was wet at this point with its 5th layer. So holding the paintbrush pretty much vertical, just shot it down a few times in different areas, and because the canvas was so wet, it didn't just stay like random blobs, it bled and merged out, and it added to the end, the finish effect and the desired result. So that's where I mentioned back in part 1, where I didn't want to drip then because I was building up and it was a bone dry canvas to begin with. But then come this point where it's wet and I wanted those little explosions almost of colour, that's where that came in handy, and it is very fun to do, and it's beautiful to watch. When you do it yourself, you'll see it hits as an initial sort of blob, and then it just slowly expands and bleeds out, and it's very beautiful. this will be the end of Cosmic Cat Part 3. Hopefully, well, I know because I checked, Part 4 will be back on track with just the ongoing audio and not the music and voiceover. So yeah, I will try and get that up within a day or so of this one going up. So I have some night work coming up, so my sleeping pattern will be a little bit out of whack again. But I have the content ready and waiting. I've just got to do some minimal editing on those ones. So thank you again for coming and checking these out. as always, it's been a pleasure, and I'm still thoroughly enjoying doing this, and hope to continue to grow and get better and get more people interested. So yeah, thank you, and take care. And hopefully see you again soon.